Don't close the book, I got more to write. You can change the story, that is my advice. I read in color, they see black and white. You just saw
and now we're actually going to open the floor for questions. So, Simon and... Yeah, sorry. Yeah, running a bit late. So yeah, does anybody want to kick us off? Does anyone have a... Okay. Can you project your voice, or do you want the microphone?
No, I'll project some call. So, this question is for James. I'm coming from the perspective of not being a Christian. So, obviously, the last thing that was kind of talked about, that's the colour of Christ's mouth. Now, like, let me give you an example. Okay, so for example, say if I had the power to control like the whole world and the science and everything. So say we've got a solar eclipse that happens. Now we can all see that happens. We'll see the effect of the solar eclipse. However, I could write that the reason why this eclipse happened is because you are all sinful and this has now happened. Now the fact of the matter is a solar eclipse will happen because it's natural, it's a natural phenomenon. However, someone can change the description, and even though it's predicated, you're going to see it all happening, but the truth behind it is how you've been taught, the perspective of how you've been taught is not actually rooted in any truth. So back to the question of, does it matter about the colour of Christ? The fact of the matter is, when we look at the translations that we all have today, there's a reason why we have this narrative kind of given to us. The time of that narrative was coincidentally written at the same time as the slave trade. So does the colour of Christ matter? All of these images and stuff were given at the time coincidentally at the same time as the slave trade. So it has to matter because clearly the the people that were being persecuted were people of colour. So how can you then say that it doesn't really kind of matter? That's kind of like my kind of thing. I know you wasn't kind of really saying it does kind of matter, but my thing is if things are rooted in truth, your perspective, like people's perspective can still be swung, like based on what you've been shown, what evidence you've been shown on what is truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's only one question I'd probably throw back to ask you, just to clarify before I answer. Where you said the narrative was written at the same time as the slave trade, what narrative are you relating to?
So when I'm talking about with regards to like the King James Version, and that's what narrative I'm kind of talking about. So a load of things has kind of been given, like, so for example, when you look at the slaves, the first thing that they had to do when the abolitionists came, the only way that they could be free is through religion. Mm-hmm. That's not being free, that's going into another system. Mm-hmm. So this was all created at the same time as the slave trade. This book as well, How to Make a Negro Christian.
Are you saying the Bible was created at the same time as the slave trade?
I'm talking about this narrative. We can talk about the whole kind of Bible itself. I'm talking about this narrative that we all hold, like that we all go to church and we all hear. There's a reason why this narrative has been given to us. We can't really kind of ignore and be like, oh, it doesn't really matter, because there's a narrative.
I think I know where you're going, and I'm actually agreeing with you, but I think it's confused in the way that you put it across. But I think I know where you're going. When you said the narrative to me will be coming out of the colonialism. Mm. And it's sold to us in the sense of, all right, then to be free you have to go through religion. Mm. And they use Christianity as the door for that. Mm. So I get that, and I hear that much of our Christianity today is still under that. And I actually see that. And it does upset me because our connection for me when it comes to Christianity is pre-slavery. So when I talked about the kingdoms, and I haven't talked about the early church fathers, I haven't even mentioned Augustine and some of the North Africans who come up with some of the core doctrines that we still hold in church, but we're never told it was North Africans that came up with that, not European. So, but when you talk about the narrative, I think the narrative relates to more how what is already in existence is being taught to us. But the Bible was already there before King James. King James was not the latest version. But in one minute, let me go back to the original question. I think there's a lot of questions in there really that you're putting out. The original one to me that I could hear in there is whether it matters. Now I'm saying on a social level, psychological, cultural, I agree, it definitely matters. Because truth matters. Where I'm saying it didn't matter to me on the spiritual level was that because to me he's a son of God, that's where I'm saying it doesn't matter. So it's not it matters or it doesn't all the way across the spectrum. In some areas, yes, it matters to me. And in another area, me being a Christian, and I'm coming from that perspective, and you so clearly you weren't. For me, as a Christian, on the spiritual side, it doesn't matter. It cross culture, it's cross race, it's cross when it comes to what Christ was about. And what he was about wasn't pushing a particular race. It was pushing his character, the love, the reflection of God. Something for me which cuts across all of that. So that's why I say in that level it doesn't matter. Because then that's why it appeals to everybody. But on the other scope, which is why I agree with Simon and many who may be in the audience and heard it tonight, that from a cultural level, psychological matter, even narrative matter, from what you've mentioned, it really, 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 really does matter. Because if we're given a narrative which is really only given to us to keep us in subjugation and still be mental slaves, then actually Christianity is not helping us, it's helping keep us in that slave mentality. And really, if Jesus comes to set us free, he needs to be making us free for real. Not what the slave masters are telling us we need to believe, or in a way that we need to believe it. Which goes back to us doing our own homework, goes back to us realising where is it we identify with Christ and how does that come to us, and was it just slavery or was there more to it? So that's my answer, and it's answered a lot of different things, but you asked a few different questions, and I hope that kind of answered your question. But it's not a black and white one for me.
No.
Some parts it matters.
Yeah.
Like I said, psychologically, culturally, socially. On the spiritual level, when I mean by spiritual, I'm talking about beyond just this all race as a social construct. On that level, I don't think it matters. That's what.
Yeah, but that's,
I don't know
what I'm saying. It's a thing of you talking about Jesus being the Son of God. Now, my point was things are being rooted in truth. Now, if that is not truth, then everything else would have to be questioned. Do you get what I mean? So my thing is, that's the pivotal point.
I'm not sure where you're going
Do
with
you get what
that.
I mean? Like, in a sense of,
Sorry.
because you're saying, okay, Jesus is the Son of God and he's come to save and all those kind of things. Now, if he was the Son of God, then he would do those things. But the fact of the matter is that the truth? Nobody can actually define to say that he is actually the Son of God and that he can actually do these things.
Okay, the Son of God thing, we can't really bottom that out now. And there's two aspects of that. You can have evidence about God, but that's like you saying to me, prove God is God.
Yeah, for real.
Can't do that.
Not that
And if I'm honest, can't do that. And Son of God is literally saying that he is God.
You can do that.
No, I'm talking for me, I can't talk for you. Maybe you can prove that God is God. I personally can't. I can give you evidences that point to a creator. I can give you evidences that there is a God in the respect of, logically breaking it down and intelligent design, and there's all these kind of different arguments. But at the end of the day, it's not just about that. It's also about knowing God on a personal. The thing with the biblical God is that there's an aspect which is personal and relational, and I can't give that to you. I can't argue that into you. I can't, explain that to you. That's something that needs to happen on a personal. So the Son of God thing, I can't give that to you. But we have to be careful because I don't want it to get too much into that. I want us to stay on topic.
Simon, you've got
So I hope that answered the initial question, because to me it sounds like there's a whole lot of other questions in there, which is fine, but maybe we can't flesh them all out tonight.
I'm staying strictly to the topic, and the sister addressed the topic. The image of Jesus, Yeshua, does matter. Otherwise, the enemy would not have changed it.
Yeah.
End of story.
Okay. Right. Thank you for your question.
There's more people that put their hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to go to some more questions. I've got a gentleman at the front. Did I see someone at the back as well?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I would say, of course it matters. Like, if we dare, as Christians, step out of the four walls of the comfort and the security of the church, you find out that it definitely matters, especially from an African Caribbean perspective, and how racism and the system is set up and how it's set up to oppress us. Every time I step out the doors of the four walls and speaking in a barber shop, on the streets and talking to people, you know, that kind of conversation is definitely matters. And for too long, Christianity fails on lots of levels, social levels, emotional levels, identity levels, because a lot of times people just want to say Jesus says and that's it, and then walk up and on and answer questions. Yeah. But it matters to people. People need to know more than Jesus just says, like, give me more about my history, my identity. That's why in the 70s or 60s and 70s, Rasta as a movement was so powerful, because men could see themselves within Rasta as black men, strong, you know, talking about Africa, repatriation, different things. So, like, to answer that question, it definitely does matter. And I think, and I just salute you guys as the hosts of the event, that you have to have these conversations to be able to listen to other people's opinions, because for too long Christians have been, yeah, we know the truth and don't hear anything else from no one else. So I celebrate this event and say,
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, once again, respects to both of you for even, you know, having this discussion. You've highlighted a couple of points that I think are very crucial, and I want to stay strictly to the focus topic. Yeah, so we're talking about the colour of Jesus Christ, Yeshua Mashiach, essentially, right? But when you go into the scriptures, Revelation chapter 1, verse 14, it states, his head and his hair were white like wool, as white as snow. We know that the context of associating hair like wool, you're referring to that kind of texture. You understand what I'm saying? and we know from a historical standpoint, to refer to highlight that characteristic, we know that you're only referring to someone of Africanoid descent. Yeah. You feel me? And then it goes on to state, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burn in a furnace. What happens when you put brass into a furnace? What colour is brass? What colour is brass? It's brown. What happens when you burn brass? It goes dark, what? It goes black, almost darkish. You understand? When we go back 2,000 years ago, you already highlighted that the northeast was an extension of Mother Africa. Everybody in that region of land was of Africanoid descent. You understand? So when we're talking about the image of Christ, the colour of Christ, first of all, every black person in this room is a descendant of the 12 tribes of Israel. You understand? We make up the 12 tribes of Israel. If you're Jamaican, you're tribe of Benjamin. If you're African American, you're tribe of Judah. You feel me? So we have to understand that in regards to the history, in regards to, you know, the white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed image of Christ, that occurred during the 16th century when the Council of Nicaea commissioned for Leonardo to paint the image in the reflection of Caesar Borgia, who was actually a homosexual. So when you see a lot of black people with that image in their homes, they're giving reverence to that of a pagan image, which is all a part of our spiritual enslavement. You feel me? We were stripped of our identity through 500 plus years of systematic dehumanization. So on a subconscious level, right, when we associate that image with the Most High power, it is spiritual enslavement. It's keeping us spiritually dead. You feel me? Now, you highlighted, you know, if Christ was a white man, or if Christ was a black man, or an Asian man, it doesn't matter. You wouldn't care. But if you truly did, I have to challenge you on this, my brother. But if you truly was about history, then it would matter to you, because you would know that if Christ was a white man, then that would completely shift everybody's history in the Bible, because every racial group, our history is in the Bible. Black people, Asians, whites. Asians are Ishmaelites. Chinese are Moabites. White people are Edomites. And there's a spiritual duality between white people and black people, which a lot of black people are not aware of today. When you're talking about Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham are our forefathers. You understand? White people are the descendants of Esau. So if it was revealed, which it never would, because as Sir over here already highlighted, it's a hypothesis. But if that was an actual reality, it would have a very big impact on the very nature of our history prior to slavery. So I just want to, you know, put that forward to the brother over here.
No one is saying was it when you said he was an Edomite and coming from Esau, are you talking about that in reference to the lineage? In terms of the chosen ones, he had Esau,
the lineage,
and Jacob, and obviously Esau was different from
Esau.
The lineage of Jacob.
Esau are essentially the Romans and the Europeans, which is why they are in power. You understand? They are directly descended.
I'm not actually saying to challenge it because I actually hear that. I hear that, brother.
From that lineage.
Yeah. I'm not saying that to challenge it. I hear that.
Right.
And one thing that I didn't consider when you said in terms of the Edomite side of it, because I'm thinking about it in terms of the chosen.
Right.
Yeah, and in terms of Jacob and in terms of Esau, and if obviously the lineage is going through and it's not through the chosen, and then it's somebody, I'm thinking, then it becomes an issue. Then yeah, I would question it because that's a different lineage. Right. I've never thought about it in that aspect, so I'd be open in saying, you know what, that side of it is something I would want to look into more. Right. In terms of the lineage and how that would affect the colour. Right. But where I was coming from with that standpoint is the whole thing is that what's important to me wasn't so much the colour. What was important to me is the character, what he had done, what he represented, and who he was in his nature. Right. Rather than, but I know that colour is a part of our identity. Right. So to clarify, that's where I'm coming from when I say that. Right. It's not just to kind of put the white at the forefront and saying, yeah, what's the problem? I'm not dismissing it. Right. But you brought another aspect that I didn't think about, so I appreciate that. Right. Awesome.
Thank you for your question. We've got another question. We've got a few questions, but one at the back here first.
Mine's not so much a question. I'm coming to you as a Christian and a simple person. And James has said that the colour of Christ doesn't matter. And I want to say that before I became a Christian, when I looked at the white Jesus, that's a white man. I'm not worshipping that. Okay? When I became a Christian, I understand when he says it doesn't matter. Because I think we have to look at it on two levels. The flesh that we live in right now. Yeah. And that is the colour that you can see. But the spirit of Christ, what it represents of God, is a different level. And that doesn't matter. That is not to do with colour. That's to do with spirit. So if you want to try and visualise it on two levels, the colour of Christ, when we talk about the spirit of Christ and who he is as a son of God, that's a different level to what we're talking about as we sit in this room. As Christ, as a white man, it does matter. Because that has become the obstacle. Don't forget we have the adversary. Okay, the adversary does everything in his power to turn us away from the truth. The adversary has done everything in his power. Can I just say also that the education system was set up as a subjugation institution. It wasn't there to enlighten people. It was to put people into their place. And it was convenient at the time as well that when we came out of so-called slavery, when we were set free, we were all put into this system. The education system was set up so the nation could be taught how to live in the system. Okay, so you're not going to get the truth through the education system. The education system is not on the side of Jesus Christ, the real Jesus Christ. Okay, the education is set up to subjugate all of us, white and black, because it's not just the black. In the system in Britain, it was the white, what they used to call. Can't remember the word they used to use, feckless people. Yeah, they're not worth anything. It's huge, this topic is huge. But what ultimately we need to know is that we have been lied to so that we do not find the truth of Jesus Christ. Thank you.
No, thank you for the feedback, because the whole thing about the education system is so true. Not to knock you, sis, but I think when you started, I was going to be like, because some of the way you're talking, it makes sense in church. And it's like, yeah, we get that kind of language, but those who aren't Christian be like, where are you going? Where are you going? But you brought out some brilliant points. I mean, to educate someone is not even really to put stuff in. The word, it actually means to take out and bring out to somebody what they're about. But our education system is set up to put stuff in, so basically you can serve the land and get the land further, rather than the truth about who you are, as in your origin. So I just thank you for that feedback. That's great.
You had a question here first. You had a question?
Oh no, to be fair, it wasn't really a question. I was just going to add to what the gentleman in the couch was saying, and I was saying that I think one of the big problems that we have a lot of the time is that people tend to give their own feelings and opinions. especially when talking about the Bible. Now, I could ask anybody in here, Christian or non-Christian, to show me a part in the Bible where it says skin color or your nation doesn't matter, and I'll wait, because Christ was positive and sure that it did matter. Hence why he said it. Like, I don't need to guess if he was black, because Solomon 1:5 states, I am black. Job 30:30 says, I am black. Jeremiah 14:2 refers to skin color as black. Daniel reveals his skin color of his arms, his legs, in visions, in Revelations, like the brother there said. And Christ said Jew first, then Gentile. It was about his people all the time. He referred to the Samaritan woman as a dog when she came to ask him. He was only about his people. First thing that he said, hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one, not hear, O
the whole world.
Saudi Arabia, not hear, O Moab, not hear, O Edom. He said, hear, O Israel, referring to his people. Then he gave them the commandments. So, from just from biblical perspective, that's one way to prove, not to question, to know for a fact he was black. Historically, everyone in them regions at that time was black skinned anyway. What people fail to realize is that black is it's a skin color. All the nations, bar Edom, were black skinned people, they were dark skinned people. They lived in them areas. So the Hamitic people, the African families, the Hebrew people, the Arabs, all of them have black skin. They all have black skin. And when people say the Asians or whoever went into slavery, the white guy, that's a rumor. They never experienced slavery, especially slavery on our level. The Moorish people had concubines. So for their, like when they ransacked Timbuktu and told the Europeans about the Hebrew people living in the west coast of Africa at that time, they was given wives. For real? They ruled in Europe. Black people ruled Europe from King James. Before that, like through all them time, Europe was ruled by black people. So there's a lot of rumors that are not true. Even in the scripture, it says in Maccabees, it talks about how they sought to put themselves in the scriptures, to paint images and likenesses of themselves. That was a prediction of what was going to happen. The white people putting themselves into the scriptures. It does matter. And if anyone could show me at one time, just one time in the Bible, where it says it doesn't matter, then cool. But you ain't gonna be able to show me. And I can prove it on here historically and biblically.
I'm not sure if this is a kind of response to me saying doesn't matter from my perspective from where I was coming from. And I don't mind if it is, because with all that said, with the whole issue about him called the lady a dog and he came for his own people, we also know that in terms of the gospel, in terms of salvation, that spanned the races, that spanned the colours.
He doesn't?
No.
Stop you.
No, but what I'm saying is, I could say it's the truth and you could say it's the truth. It's not going to help anybody in here. Right. So I better, come from where I'm coming from as well. So I don't just want to make it as an assertion. People can check that for themselves. What I'm saying is, if you're saying then the salvation is only for black people, which is partly what it could be saying, what I'm saying is, we have to be clear on what that is for and who it is for. So, no, in some respect, I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm kind of making that spectrum a bit bigger. That's all I'm saying, and I'm not just trying to whittle it down to there's only certain kind of people that this thing was for, or Jesus was trying to reach. Because he did make it clear I come from my people, and he was quite specific about that. But then you've got people, Gentiles that came to him who had great faith, and he was amazed by two of them, and that was like two Gentiles that were talked about who actually were changed by that, and they weren't Israelites at all to begin with. So there's other instances as well where actually Jesus commended them and they sent away and they had belief in him as the Saviour, and they weren't of those backgrounds. So I'm only saying that in terms of, I think it's broader than just where my gentleman friend was coming from. But, this is why we're here to talk. This is why I'm here to listen and to bring your perspective and bring my perspective. But I want to bring a kind of another perspective to that as well. So that's the only reason I wanted to mention that, because I'm not just saying it doesn't matter blanket, and I was never saying that from the beginning.
Thank you, James. We've got time for, I was going to say we've got time for one more question. I know we had one here. I see your hand there, so we might, depending how long this is. How is it a question or a statement?
It's more of a statement. I personally really don't like when people say, I don't care whether you're black, white, green, purple. There's no such thing as green or purple people. You know, people come in real colours and that is black and white. That's the first thing I personally don't like. But the other thing is, for me, when people say, and I'm not picking on James when I say that, because other people say it in different contexts as well, but when people say, oh, it doesn't matter what colour Christ was, to me, the only person really that it doesn't matter to is a white man, because white people are the ones that benefited from Jesus being a white man in terms of white supremacy and in terms of the financial benefit of slavery and oppression. And to this day, white society still benefits from the blood that was shed 500 years ago. You know, and society that is literally built on the backs and blood of black people. So for me, as a black person growing up in the church, and the attitudes of, you know, and my grandparents as well, and my parents, I want to burn it, it's still there, have that picture of, you know, white Jesus. Growing up and seeing that image is damaging, because you do look upon yourself as being less than. If this is perfection, because Christ is perfect, and I think this is what people aren't touching on as well. What we have to remember is what Christ represents to people. Christ is God, Christ is perfect, Christ is what you should aspire to be. And if all those things are coming in a white form and you're looking on your ebony black skin and seeing that as being different and lesser than, that's incredibly damaging. And like someone touched on earlier, the enemy always switches things around, you know, always turns things on its head, always turns the truth into a lie. So if the enemy is presenting him as a white man, well, just by virtue of that, it's got to be a black man.
I see hands up, but gentleman at the back, yeah.
Yeah, me?
Yeah.
It's a 2-4 question. I think. What we're going to do with the truth? Okay. What we're going to do with the truth, because the truth, when we find it out, hurts. But the truth, going back to James, what he says, sets us free. So to the experts over there, what we're going to do with the truth, to process that truth, because you have to understand what this man says, that if you listen and you check it out for yourself, what went wrong? So that's the twofold. With the truth, before slavery, what went wrong when we was in power? What went wrong when we had the thing, the kings, the queen, the boom, the bang? What went wrong? Something went wrong in the DNA of the foundation. And until the foundation understands truth and connects something back, because we're looking for the world to owe us something. We owe the world everything because we're the foundation. They would not let us in this building if the foundation was unstable. So, question, what we're going to do about the truth when it's processed and it causes rage, anger, bitter, to what we're going to do, because we are the foundation. What do you do with the truth?
Yeah, let me just briefly address that. Extremely important questions, brother. Many of you are familiar with that famous line from An Officer and a Gentleman, you can't handle the truth. The reality is, a lot of our people cannot handle the truth. That's the sad reality. But what we're going to do with it, we have to keep preaching it. We have to keep teaching it. And especially to our children, because our children don't understand the kind of foolishness that's going on. Our children don't understand the dynamics of the world, which is, the sisters alluded to, is built on lies. So we have to teach our children the truth. And in terms of
What went wrong?
That's what I was just going to, brother. What went wrong? I could say simply that we lost our way, but it's not just about that. It was about not having an understanding of the type of personalities that the enemies had. Because and they're still displaying that personality. They are war-mongering people. There are human-hating people. They are anti-life. Yeah. Their whole thing is about control and destruction. Yeah. And that is what we didn't properly prepare for. Yes. And so when the enemy came into the continent of Africa, we weren't prepared for it. They came with their guns in those days, the weapons of mass destruction. They still have those weapons of mass destruction now, more advanced, the nuclear bombs. And so nations like America, Russia, can do what they like. They drop their bombs wherever they like. Look at the foolishness happening in Syria. I'm not addressing the Arab issue because I'm not concerned about the Arab issue. But because they have weapons of mass destruction, they were able to come into Africa, take over the continent, still benefiting from our enslavement, as the sister said, and still able to control us. So what are we going to do with the truth? We have to spread the truth. We have to make sure that we empower ourselves again, spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally, intellectually. And we've got to use science. So that's my contribution.
In terms of the question, I can't really say that I know how it went wrong. But I do know slavery never happened overnight. And you mentioned the guns, and yeah, there was definitely force, but there was also a scheme about it. There was also the whole divide and conquer, which was a whole thing that came from colonialism back, getting into the minds of the people, getting them to turn against each other, and we see that still happening even today. And we see that in a lot of the African nations, we see that all over the world. And a lot of that was planted by other nations trying to overtake them, because Africa, let's remember, was a big, powerful place that had been there for a long time. You couldn't just walk in Africa and take over it, even if you had guns, and they would fight you tooth and nail. Many of them didn't just turn over sideways and says, we'll hand our hands up because you got guns. If you think that, then really we're kind of doing a disservice to the Africans. But so it happened over time, and there was different elements of how they got in, and why we didn't stop that. If we had a benevolence that wasn't exhibited by those who came, I don't know. If there was an ignorance there, I don't know. I can't answer that, but I know it's a lot more complex than just they came to our shores, they had the guns, they had the Bible, and says, you know what, you're ours. I don't believe that for a second. There was elements of that, but there was more. In terms of the truth, I would take a step back as well by saying, let's at least agree what the truth is before we know what we're going to do with it. And we're still at that point, to me. We're not at the point of what we do with it. We're at the point of what is it. And most of us don't know. In an age where we've got more information than ever, at speedier than ever, most of us ask Google before we ask God what we're supposed to do and what's next. And then we're wondering how we can't find the truth. And Google's full of misinformation. If you don't really know what you're looking for in the first place, Google's one of the worst places to go to, because it will give you 10 million options. So really, there's like something that we have to find which is deeper, which goes back to intuition, it goes back to praying, it goes back to seeking for yourself who God really is. Because at the end of the day, we all have to answer to Him one-on-one. And He's not going to say, well, it's because of what you said over there that I'm going to do something with you. For my faith, yeah, we're going to have to answer to the Lord. So at the end of the day, we really have to think, what is the truth, and know it within our hearts, and decipher that before we get to the point of, okay, now what do we do with it? And this is why we're having this conversation. This is why we can put the event on, because to be honest, we know deep down, most people don't know what that is. And they're wrestling with it, and I think we should keep wrestling with it, because we'll get there. If there's a truth, an absolute truth, and it's real, and it exists, and it's there to be found, we keep wrestling, we're gonna get there. So that's my response to that.
Okay. Jade, you had a question?
No, I just wanted to say something.
Do
I need the mic? Yeah, because I'm coming from a perspective of a Christian. I just want people to know that I wasn't brought up in the church either. And so when I'm asking, does it really matter? I'm not talking about on a, like you were saying, like a social level, like from what we see physically. I was coming from more of a spirit level, and I think we've taken it out a bit, but you got to remember as well that as a Christian, you believe in the Trinity. So it's not that I'm just believing in the Father and the Son. I also believe in the Holy Spirit. So that's what I recognise. That's why I say it doesn't matter, because you can recognise, like if you recognise the Spirit of God, you can recognise it in somebody that's not of the same colour as you, because it's like, you know what, this person knows God. Like for me personally, I can always tell like this person believes in what I believe. It's a stronger attraction. So that's why I'm saying that it doesn't matter in terms of it goes over that. So I understand where everyone's coming from, because like before, if I saw an image, it probably would be like that. But now that I know the Spirit, that's why it doesn't matter to me. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. We had one last question here.
Yeah.
Do you have a question? Or
No,
a statement?
it was this question, definitely.
Oh, a question.
Because I see a lot of people having their statements, and it's longing out the process. There should be not too much focus on everything else, but focus on what the subject matter is, because there can be other discussions made available, because you can see from the turnout and from everyone's reactions that they want to have these discussions. So I think it should be aligned with order, you know what I mean? But anyway, the main question I wanted to speak to you about is having the spirit element. When you said it doesn't matter and they happen for a reason, why would you ignore the spiritual side, which I believe the curses are the main element of those slavery, which people talk about, transatlantic slavery, the curses. There's no one who can touch what the Most High allows. You can't touch. So when you have that safety removed, many things can happen, and they've been foretold from centuries before, thousands of years before. Prophecy, exactly. And so, what would you say in terms of the spiritual aspects? Because a lot of people are talking about the outer, and they are regarding the spirit, but they're not having the true understanding of the depth of what the spirit really is. But not to digress from that, what would you say the spiritual aspect in terms of the curses, if you're aware of the curses in Deuteronomy 28? 68. And verse 68 as well, but it goes from verse 15 and also the chapter 32 in Deuteronomy in the Torah, which is also the dated book before even the New Testament. So these are the understanding of the real Jews and the real Hebrews, their bloodlines. So what would you have the understanding of? What would you bring out to this answer that question? Exactly, yeah.
What's the actual question?
The spiritual aspect. What would you say towards the curses, right? Would you agree, and would you say that's the relevant point to the outcome of where we are right now, if you understand what I'm saying?
What are the curses?
Deuteronomy 28, verse 15. Okay, you can read. Are you familiar with the curses?
I want to know where you're coming from in terms of those curses.
Well, it's just scripture. Nothing from my point of view. It's just the word that's always been there. Obviously, it's been translated in the King James, but the fact is the curses still are aligned exactly with these times and exactly with these.
So if you don't do what God's saying, there is a curse.
Exactly, of course. But what would you say towards that, in terms of the spiritual aspect? Because there's a spiritual aspect within the Messiah being there. Right? When it says, do not call him a name in vain, do not call him any of the gods, so then even with the names as well, that's a very powerful thing, but we're not going to go into that right now. Within the names, okay?
Yeah,
so,
we have time to go into
of course,
let's go back. Because
the spiritual aspect of where we come now. Where
you've asked a lot of things and built it up quite a bit. So let me just answer because of the time.
Sure.
In terms of the curses thing, for me, obviously it comes from perspective of me believing in who Jesus is, and under the gospel, as I believe it, I don't actually have an issue. I don't think we're under curses. I don't think curses are over people of colour. I don't think curses are over black people. That's where I'm coming from. Okay. I don't think they apply to us.
Okay.
And if you're saying they apply because we've broken the law, then that means you're living by law to break it, to have a curse. So for me, I am actually more inclined with living under a way of grace. Now that doesn't mean commandments don't matter. That doesn't mean that we're not in line with those things where God's saying, don't murder. Or we know that. We know that. But for me, there's an understanding of a law of Christ which goes beyond that. which is like Matthew 5 and Matthew 6 when he reinterprets much of the commandments. So I'm coming from that standpoint, which is another perspective.
And so what would you say to Matthew 22?
I can't explain to you that perspective where you're coming from, that's how you see it.
Sure.
But I'm coming from a different perspective, which is Matthew 5, 6 and 7, where I believe that he actually reinterprets the commandments and he reinterprets the law. So
when you say
reinterpret,
can you just clarify, reinterprets or change? Because there needs to be a definitive.
Remember when you started this, you said you wanted to stay on topic, and this is not the topic.
But you're saying that they don't matter. If you're saying that they don't matter or they've been reinterpreted, yeah. What would you say towards the original
I'm talking about the
Torah?
commandments. I'm not necessarily talking about the curses. And your question was specifically about the curses. So
the curses and how is it the spiritual element? That's what I'm saying. The spiritual element of those curses. Not specifically the curses, but the spiritual element which actually resemble of where we are right now.
Maybe I was misunderstanding your question, and so I wouldn't want to.
I was trying to compress it without being too long. If you understand,
I wouldn't want to try and answer that without having a clear cut. I know exactly what you're trying to ask me.
Okay.
So from what you're saying or how I'm answering, I don't have a very, very clear understanding of what you're really asking me.
Do we have time to clarify? Shall I clarify for you?
Partly, but again, you did say at the minute about staying on topic.
Of course.
And I think this is actually a bit broader than the topic. I think we're going into other things to even explain this. So if we're going to stay to what you started off with, then I don't think we can get into that now. Doesn't mean we can't do it at a future date, as was said as well. Doesn't mean we can't have this debate outside of here. But I want us to clarify some things before we get into that, because again, it's not just about us as well. It's about those who are watching and then being able to take part of this and take something away from it. So I don't want to leave it on a note where I'm confused with where you're coming from. We're trying to flesh this out and it becomes something else. Does that make sense? I'm not trying to fob it off, but I'm just being honest about where I'm at, where you're at, and I think we can't really deal with that at the moment. I can't really deal with that right now. So that's just where I'm coming from.
I'm going to try and address this briefly, brother, because I'm familiar with the curses you're talking about in Deuteronomy. The rest of the stuff I'm not that familiar with, Matthew, Mark, whatever it is. But I'm familiar with the suggestion that because we fell away from God, we fell away from doing God's will, we were cursed and we were put into slavery.
Yeah.
I'm with James on this. I don't believe that what happened to us was a result of a curse. Very simply, if you disobey certain rules, there are consequences. There are always consequences. Even if you look at it from a Christian perspective, if you don't follow the teachings of Christ, there are consequences. You'll fall out of the church. You might get into prostitution, drug dealing. There are consequences. As a child, I'm trying to break this down very simply. As a child, if you don't follow the teachings of your parents, there may be consequences. So in a sense, breaking it down simply, the curses you could refer to as simply consequences. Now, go to the spiritual aspect of this, the spiritual aspect is where you come back to the topic, which is about the color of Christ, of Yeshua. Because in a spiritual sense, melanated people, as far as I'm concerned, are far more spiritual than non-melanated people. So there's a spiritual aspect in terms of the color of your skin, that your ability to connect with the Creator, the spiritual realm, and so on and so forth. So I'm connecting the point you're making about spirituality to the beautiful melanin aspect that we have, and therefore back to the color of Christ. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but have you enjoyed the discussion this evening? Yeah. Thank you. I'd like to say a huge thank you to my guests this evening, Reverend James Richard. Thank you. And Mr. Simon Solomon. Can I just say, I think it's brilliant that two people can come together who might not have the same agreement on something, but have an educated discussion without, you know, fisticuffs and whatever else. So a big thank you to you guys for bringing such an insightful conversation to the floor. We are going to round up now, and I believe James is going to give us just your round-up summary of your thoughts, your opinions from tonight.
I just want to say thank you for all of you for coming out. We know that with this topic, we knew it was going to go into different areas. I'll be honest, there was a part of trepidation in me when I thought, you know what, are we really going to do this? But actually, we need to do this. And I want to challenge us, whether you're Christian or not, to keep looking, keep researching, because even as a Christian, there's more to learn. Doesn't mean you know it all. And one of the reasons why, as Christians, we do get dismissed so easily is because we have the mentality of, well, I know Jesus and nothing else matters. That's rubbish. Yeah, that's rubbish. We have to get beyond that. We have to get beyond that. So really, it's I suppose it's a challenge and an urge for you to say, look, keep digging, keep looking. And if you know it's truth, because it will rock you, it will change your life, it will have an effect on your heart. That's what it does, it arrests you. But I just want to say that I'm thankful for all of you coming out. Hopefully you'll form new relationships with people. You understand something tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you don't see it as a waste of time. Did you see it as a waste of time? You're not going to tell me, no.
Yes, it was idiot.
Yes. Keep back. Idiot thing, you should have said him like no. For real. I just want to say, I'm glad that we all came. Keep praying. You know what? We're going to find out in the end who actually has the truth. We are. Every single one of us, we're going to find out. Whether that's death, or whether that's when God come back, or whoever we think the end's going to be, we will find out, what that's going to be. So I respect every man that stands by their convictions, even if their convictions are different from mine, because real recognize real, and don't be afraid to, if you're a Christian and black, be proud of it, but know what you're talking about. Don't talk fluffle and nonsense. And if you're not that, be proud of it, but stand by what you know, and be open to challenge. But that's it. So I just want to thank you for coming out, because they need to set up.
I thought you were swearing there, man.
No. Because Reverend, no. Well, I'm not a saint either, so you know what? That's just life. So, guys, you came here safely and praying that you get home safely. And just okay, I just want to pray to close it. Is that alright? Is that cool? Alright. Did you want to have a close?
Yeah, just one final point from me. Staying with the topic. The scriptures tells us that we are created in the image of God. And we all know, or should know, that the original peoples on this planet were African people, black people, melanated people like you and I, which suggests what?
God is black.
All right.
Alright, let's pray. God, we thank you for faculties like common sense, reason, logic, spirituality, the ability to ask questions, the fact that there is truth. Not Big Bang, not evolution, but we came from an intelligent, personal, powerful, loving being. And we thank you that at the end of the day, we're all going to find out what the truth is. And our lives must exhibit that as much as our knowledge, our understanding, and different things, Father, that we can tend to put forward. So I ask that as we are here today, we haven't come and been here by coincidence, but we've come to hear something that will trigger a new pursuit in our hearts. That we will be closer to you and that we'll understand more. And there are some who may see God differently from me, but I'm just asking you, because if you are God, then you transcend all of this. You transcend all of this, Lord, because you created it all. We pray that you will open our eyes more to the truth. That you continue to keep us. That you continue to pour your love in. We're in a day where everyone's being polarized, people are arguing, and people are holding their corners, fighting for their own identity. But let us be like Christ, who was just transparent and actually took being stripped to show people that even if you kill me, I have power over death. You cannot take me down. Let us show our strength by taking the hits, and we thank you for tonight. And if there's hits to come because of it, they're going to come, we don't mind, because Lord, the truth needs to be out there. So continue to help us. Continue to be with us, because you are God all by yourself and you need no help. And we give you all the glory. In your holy name, Jesus, some say Yeshua, there were different names, but we know there is one Christ. So we give you all the glory and honor. Amen.
Thank you.
Don't close the book, I got more to write. You can change the story, that is my advice. I read in color, they see black and white. You just saw the cover.